Hello and welcome to today's HealthITAnalytics.com webcast brought to you by Looker and Healthify, analytics strategies to keep up with modern healthcare. I am Kyle Murphy, Senior Director of Editorial at Extelligent Media and moderator of today's presentation. Looker is a complete data platform that offers data analytics and business insights to every department and easily integrates into applications to get data directly into the decision-making process. The company is powering data-driven cultures at more than 800 industry-leading and innovative companies, including Healthify, Athena Health, Cigna, PDX, and Counsel. Visit looker.com/solutions/healthcare for more. We'll begin with a presentation by our speakers, followed by a question and answer segment. Audience members can submit questions at any time during the webcast using the question tool to the left of their screens. For all technical matters or difficulties, click the help icon at the top right-hand corner of your screen. A reminder that a recording of the webcast will be made available following this presentation. Mary Newton is a professional services consultant at Looker, where she helps customers foster data-driven cultures through the implementation of the Looker platform. She has worked with over 40 customers in the healthcare, e-commerce, and marketing industries since joining Looker last year. Martin Lukersheiden is lead data scientist at Healthify, where he contributes to Healthify's mission with data-driven solutions. Martin has over 10 years of experience in data analytics and predictive modeling. With that, I would like to hand the floor over to Mare to begin today's presentation.
Thanks, Kyle. Hi, everybody. So today we're going to be discussing analytics in the context of the modern healthcare world and how platforms such as Looker can really help organizations to stay ahead of the curve. So we'll start with a quick look at the evolution that the industry has seen in recent history, and then we'll follow that with a deep dive into how Looker can play a part in that evolution. And then Martin from Healthify will jump in and provide a more in-depth customer story regarding their Looker strategy and implementation. Healthcare has really evolved dramatically over the past 10 or so years, and a major industry shift that we've seen has been the movement away from a fee-for-service-based incentive model in which providers were really reimbursed by insurers or payers for the procedures that they performed to a much more value-based care model that focuses on patient outcomes. So this fee-for-service model incentivized providers to perform more procedures in order to increase reimbursement, whereas the value-based care model focuses much more on preventative care and on positive outcomes by promoting risk sharing between payers and providers. In addition to this major shift, there's also been the impact of technology on healthcare. So the use of electronic medical records is near universal, where fewer than 10% of hospitals were using electronic health records just 10 years ago. Patients now have options for receiving medical attention through mobile and digital communication, mobile health and telemedicine, and this provides new methods for receiving medical advice. Patients are taking an active role in their care plans, and they're using small wearable technology like Fitbits in order to be more aware of their health and fitness levels. And even things like DNA sequencing technology have become really prominent in today's industry, enabling things like personalized medicine to become a reality. So there's really been a major shift from just 10 years ago through today within the healthcare industry that we've seen. So what does all of this mean? Well, it means that there's now a lot more data available than there really ever has been before. And the utilization of this data is vital for continuing to compete in this evolving industry. The changing incentive models have forced a rethinking of how payers and providers work together in order to implement these new incentive models that reward providers for keeping people healthy and producing positive outcomes, rather than simply performing a large number of procedures. And this really leads to a general need for collaboration across different stakeholders within the system. And that's necessary for both patient care coordination and for new risk-sharing approaches between providers and payers. So there's a lot of change coming, and there's a lot of change that's already happened. And that results in a need for a new type of analytics tool. And really a new approach to analytics. And a platform like Looker can help organizations to gain value and actionable insight from the massive amounts of data that are out there and to really stay on the cutting edge of this new and evolving industry. Now, with the customers that I've worked with, healthcare customers included, of course, I typically see one of two problems that are preventing those organizations from being as efficient and really as effective as they could be, which is a must in today's world. The first problem that I see all the time is this concept of a data bottleneck. There's typically one team or even just one person that has access to the data, and so every single question that someone in the business has to go through that individual or that team. Everyone needs data, but they have to get in line to get it. And that's this concept of a data breadline, which causes a bottleneck. And it can be terribly frustrating for those people that are in line. And it's often frustrating for the analyst or the analyst team as well, because they're running the same analysis over and over again, often with just very subtle changes based on new questions that come up. So what happens is that people stand in line once, and then they get in line again, and by the third time, they're sick of waiting. They just want to be able to go and make the decisions that they have, sometimes without data, sometimes with offline data. And that often leads to the second problem that comes up quite frequently, and that's this idea of data chaos. People get fed up with the bottleneck, and so they take bits of data, they keep them on their laptop, whatever they can get their hands on, they start to utilize, and then they do the analysis themselves. And that sounds great. There's no line. Everyone's able to do their own analysis. But then you run into a situation where people are doing things differently. You lose this concept of central governance, and so different people in the organization have different answers. How do you know what the truth is at that point? Instead of making a strategy, time is spent trying to debug different analyses and figure out what's right and what's wrong. So really, what we're looking for is the best of both worlds. You want the trustworthiness that comes with everyone having these standardized definitions and some sort of central governance of your business metrics, but you also don't want to lose the ability for people to ask questions and get their own answers. You want to combine the governance and the standards and the scalability that you typically see with older technologies out there that often leads to those data bottlenecks. And you want to combine that with newer technology that's focused on self-service, agility, and flexibility. So fundamentally, you want to enable everybody to make better decisions with data. But that's really only going to happen if everyone can ask questions of the data themselves and get reliable, correct answers without waiting in line. And that's where a product like Looker comes in. Looker provides a new way of doing things. So the Looker platform enables users to securely access and analyze data that's relevant to them. And the queries that they're running are running in database, which means that Looker is able to take advantage of the continuous increases in power and speed that are available in today's database technologies. Through the use of its modeling language, which is called LookML, Looker enables analysts to define that core business logic and those metrics in a single place. So all of those queries that they're running all the time, they're able to centralize that in one spot to ensure consistency in the reporting and analysis that's done throughout the entire organization. And then this platform can be accessed both through the application itself as well as through Looker's API. And finally, Looker really leverages today's technology. So customers have the option of hosting Looker on-premise, but they can also utilize Looker's securely deployed and fully hosted cloud-based solution, or they could even opt to utilize a more hybrid approach, as Healthify did. And Martin will be speaking a bit more about that later. Looker currently works with a variety of healthcare customers across different areas of the industry, from pharmaceutical companies and provider organizations to health insurance companies and newer healthcare technology companies. So I'm actually going to dive into a couple of examples of this in order to give you a better sense of exactly how Looker is being utilized across these areas. In the healthcare technology space, specifically focusing on mobile healthcare, SkinVision has created an application that enables users to take pictures of any moles or marks on their skin that they might have concerns about. And users can then, based on answers to a few questions and the image that they send, they can pass this along to SkinVision. And SkinVision's dermatologists determine the risk of any sort of malignancy and whether an in-person visit to an actual dermatologist locally would be recommended. So what they're doing with Looker is they're connecting Looker to their Redshift database in order to analyze their assessor performance or their dermatologist performance, and then to identify correlations between different risk factors that are known and the outcomes that they see in terms of malignancy of different skin spots. So they're doing this, and then on top of that, they're also looking at things like customer usage and customer retention. And in the context of this, they have their user base, and because they're working with patient data, they of course have security constraints. So they really only have a small subset of users who are able to access any sort of personally identifiable information coming in through their application. And to do that, they're using a Looker feature called Extend. So they're able to hide that PII, personally identifiable information, from the majority of their user base in order to ensure proper security of all of that sensitive information, so that then their users can access all of that data, ask any questions that they have, and be sure that they have consistent analysis with others across different departments. Another example on the provider side is a company called Move Health, and they're providing a results-driven total joint replacement program. And they're using Looker to track patient health and recovery from the initial consultation all the way through to the outpatient follow-up. So they collect patient records for every single interaction that they have, and then they store those within a Postgres database. And by putting Looker on top of that Postgres database, they're actually able to enable their clinicians to view data at the individual patient level to track recovery and progress, to look at how much they're walking and what they're doing related to that joint replacement. But then they're also able to aggregate that up and group across patients in order to look for general trends and correlations and to find opportunities for continued improvement of their program. And then finally, on the payer side, Cigna is using Looker to help with their per member per month cost analysis. And per member per month is a vital metric in the insurance industry, especially with this shift towards value-based reimbursements. And per member per month basically takes all of the claim costs that come through, and they normalize those across the entire insured population. And this is really important for utilizing benchmarks when it comes to determining reimbursements, particularly in this more value-based world. And so what they're able to do is they're able to take these per member per month costs, and they're able to slice and dice those in a lot of different ways, including service categories, different procedure types, different locations. And they can also look at this over time, because they may see a large increase in the number of claims coming through, but they also might be seeing increases in their membership. So by looking at this normalized view, they actually have a better sense of what their overall costs are looking like per patient. Now, those were a few brief examples of how Looker is working within the health industry today and different Looker implementation styles. But I'd like to pass things over to Martin, and he'll be able to go a bit deeper into his customer story at Healthify.
Thank you, Mare. Hi, everyone. I'm Martin from Healthify. I'm going to talk, after a short, brief overview about Healthify, about our requirements that we had when it comes to an analytics platform. We're going to talk about why we chose Looker, what the challenges were when we implemented or deployed Looker. I will give you guys some details about the implementation, and we will take a look at the final solution before we hand off to a Q&A session. So Healthify's mission is to build a world where no one's health is hindered by their need. What that means for us is that we help health organizations to find community services or health resources, to track social needs, and to coordinate referrals. A referral for us means sending a patient from a caseworker or care team sends a patient to a health resource. Our main products are Healthify Search, which is basically a search engine for health resources. Our users can search for resources, filter, edit them, and share them with their coworkers or their patients. Healthify Search is our core product, and our other products sit on top of Healthify Search. There's Healthify Track that allows case managers or care teams to identify social needs. It really allows to manage social determinants of health in given populations. And there's Healthify Coordinate that allows our users to fully manage and coordinate the entire life cycle of a referral. Healthify Coordinate closes the loop between care teams, patients, and health organizations. These are some of our clients. Our clients come from the payer side, provider side, or health agency side. So let me talk about the requirements that we had when looking for a new analytics or business intelligence platform. Our legacy platform had exactly the problem that Mare summarized on her slide. We indeed had this bottleneck situation where a very small number of developers needed to provide, or data analysts needed to provide data insights for our users. And that created that bottleneck, but also it created that chaos that Mare was referring to. So we needed a platform that allowed our users themselves to analyze data quickly, comprehensively, and effectively. And we wanted to share data insights with our customers by sending them reports or dashboards, but also we wanted to allow our customers to use our platform themselves with a restricted data access, of course. And like anything else that we do, we need to be HIPAA compliant as we are dealing with patient data in our systems. Why we chose Looker? So Looker has a really easy to use user interface that enables users with no technical background or data background at all to deep dive into data. It has modern dashboard and visualization capacities. It has the capacity to schedule reports and send them out to internal or external users. And it can be self-hosted, which is important for us, as we will see in the next slides. And it has also strong development tools that allow developers to quickly create and efficiently maintain data models. It has also version control, a built-in version control system that keeps track on all the code changes that we do in our data models. So once we decided to go with Looker, the main challenge for a successful deployment was to run Looker or deploy Looker in a HIPAA-compliant environment. What it means for us was instead of using Looker as a software as a service hosted by the Looker company, we deployed a so-called on-premise Looker application, a self-hosted Looker application, at our infrastructure provider, which is Actionable. Actionable is a technical infrastructure provider or platform as a service provider for highly regulated industries such as the health industry. Therefore, we needed to deploy Looker in so-called Docker containers. We needed to Dockerize Looker. containers or Docker containers is a technology that allows applications to run very isolated in distributed systems in the cloud, if you will. But there was no existing documentation for that kind of deployment, whether on Actionable or any other Docker-based architecture, as we were pioneering with this technical setup. Let me show you a high-level graph of our current technical setup. So I'd say, I don't know, maybe Mer can later clarify. I think I would assume the vast majority of Looker customers have only one Looker instance or one point of access, which is on the Looker side. There's a Looker application and everything is managed on that side. This is not an option, was not an option for us, as we again need to be HIPAA compliant. So that led to this setup that we're seeing here, where we have to manage all those parts that are on the right-hand side in that highly secured HIPAA compliant Actionable environment. We're seeing in the middle, the blue icons are our Looker applications, a production and a staging Looker application. Both have access to our main data repositories in the middle, on the right, on the very right-hand side, and both of those applications have their own databases for usage, storage, among some other things. And they're important to note here, there's no data leakage from going outside of that gray Actionable box, even though there are connections to the outside world. For example, the code that we use for to deploy those applications, but also the code that we use to model data with. But again, there is no data leakage whatsoever between those two worlds or any other participant that is outside of that Actionable universe. In the following slides, I will give you a few interesting aspects from a technical standpoint that are worth mentioning. The entire implementation required a really well understanding how Looker works in the inside. We needed to understand the nitty-gritty details of Docker containers, and we needed to analyze how we best could leverage the usage of Linux tools to come up with a robust and secure solution. During that setup time, we collaborated closely both with Looker and with Actionable. Again, we were pioneering with this kind of setup. One really interesting aspect is what we could summarize as state management. State management refers to a very important detail when it comes to this kind of deployment with Looker containers. Those kind of containers can be brought up or can be built at any time. So that oftentimes you have more than only one application up and running, even if your objective is only to have one container running. But as this happens quite frequently, it's essential that you manage the state of those two applications running for a short time at the same time. You need to synchronize those applications, and you have to come up with a robust solution for that kind of state management. Another worth mentioning aspect is how you manage credential and change of the application. By that I mean, you will remember all the floating parts of the graph of our infrastructure that I showed you earlier. There's a lot of credentials and key management involved, and we needed to make sure that this solution is secure and robust. That that allows that information, data flows from one part of the solution to the other, whether it's be from the database to the app or from or to the Git repository from the Looker app when we talk about code changes. And change management refers to the fact that we're talking about a living application where we constantly do changes, whether it be on the way how we deploy the application or how we manage our data models. And this change management involves that we have a proper environment for testing things and to stage things. And last but not least, we also needed to provide internal documentation and how-tos, again, as our setup was not yet documented. So after these technical, even though high level, but still technical details, let us take a look on how our Looker solution actually looks like to our users. What we see here is a so-called Looker Explorer. A Looker Explorer allows a user to deep dive or slice and dice into data. What we see here is a daily timeline of created referrals. Again, a referral is a patient being referred by a case manager to a health organization. What we see here is a timeline of created referrals, and the different colors indicate their current referral status, whether it's just created or acknowledged already or cancelled or even completed. On the left-handed side on the screenshot, we see a field picker that allows a user to quickly, in an Excel pivot table style, to choose data fields of their interest. On the next slide, we see a Looker dashboard, which is basically a container of all sorts of report elements. We will find our bar chart again in the left center of the page, but we see other report elements and indicators that allow our users to measure the success of the product, if you will. And by that, I would like to play the ball back to the other presenters, and maybe we continue with the Q&A session.
Thanks, Martin. Before we do that, I know I worked with you throughout the implementation, and I had a couple of questions, if you don't mind, that might be useful to share with the audience. So the first thing I wanted to ask was if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about your data storage and structures that are sitting behind Looker.
Sure. So our data repository are Postgres SQL databases. We're talking about a traditional Postgres database where all the application data flows into, that is user data, company or team data. By company, I mean client company data, team structure, and so forth. All the health resource data goes in there, and all data about referrals, for example, but also patient data. Then there's a second main data repository, which itself is also a Postgres database, but it's a special kind of database. It's a data warehouse that we have for event tracking. By event tracking, I mean things such as search data or page views for health resources or sign-ins. That is a Segment database. Segment is a provider for data warehouse solutions that nicely integrates with Actionable.
Thanks, Martin. You had also mentioned the collaboration throughout your implementation between Healthify and Looker, and I know I was involved in that as well. Would you mind sharing a bit more about what that collaboration looked like?
Yeah, as you mentioned, Mare, you helped us quite a bit to get up to have achieved what we wanted to achieve, and we also worked with Mike, a system architect at Looker, and that collaboration helped us tremendously to iteratively go where we are now. And we're really grateful for that.
And a final question for you quickly. Is there anything interesting on your roadmap, anything coming up in the near future that you'd want to share?
Again, what I mentioned, we think, or I do at least, about our current setup as some living thing. We're constantly changing and improving the platform. One precise thing that we have planned is to have the Looker application not accessing our database, our current production database, but a reporting database, a database follower, in order to get some load from that production database. Even though we're not a big data company per se, but still, there are always things to improve in order to make it more robust, more state-of-the-art. We are also working on exposing patient data to some of our internal users. That includes, of course, a proper data access right management. And once we have achieved this, the next thing on our roadmap is to allow external users to use our platform. And apart from that, of course, we're constantly improving and enriching our existing data models, and build better and more sophisticated and more appealing and more storytelling reports and dashboards.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin. So just to wrap things up here before we dive into any questions from the audience, I wanted to summarize by touching on 3 common themes that we've seen across successful customers of ours in the healthcare industry, and really other industries as well, but specifically within healthcare. And the first is this idea of having centralized data from a variety of sources, all stored within a modern database. So taking advantage of all of the data that's out there is really key, and bringing it together into some sort of centralized database is going to be vital in enabling flexible and agile self-service analytics. The second is finding alignment across the organization on key business metric definitions. So ensuring that there's agreement across different departments and groups so that you can build that in a central way and govern those definitions and ensure that everyone's using those same things in their analysis. And then the final piece is enabling users to really derive insight from the data on their own. So allowing them to go in and ask their own questions and enabling them with some sort of product or platform to find answers and make decisions based on the data they see. So with that, I think, Kyle, we'd love to open it up to any questions from the audience.
Awesome. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Mare. And as Mare just mentioned, we're going to move on to the question and answer portion of the webcast. So again, a reminder that audience members can submit questions using the question tool to the left of their screens. All right, guys, let's move into the first one. So how many months does it take to deploy the Looker solution? And then, what are the most common types of queries? And then with that, how many records are we talking about that are actually being queried in order to kind of execute that kind of response?
Yeah. So the first part of the question, how many months to deploy? Roughly, it took us 1 to 2 months to come up with our solution. that does not include the evaluation of analytics platforms out there. And the biggest query, that's hard to tell. Again, we are not a big data company. However, if you think about querying event tables, search events, we're talking about tables that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of rows. Our health resource table, for example, has more than 200,000 health resources listed. So this is the ballpark of query size. So it's in the 100,000s to a few millions max at this point.
Excellent. We'll move on to the next question for Meir here. How does Looker differentiate itself from the other analytic dashboard tools such as Tableau or Qlik?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think really where Looker differentiates is the idea of Looker being a data platform. So it's a place where you can really centralize your logic, and that might be similar to a Qlik type environment where they have a modeling layer. But the difference in Looker is that you're actually running queries in database as opposed to extracting that data like you would with a tool like Qlik. And anytime you're extracting data, you're running the risk of your data getting stale. So by running queries in database, Looker ensures that you're actually seeing what's happening, what your data looks like right now. So that's a core differentiator right there. And then opposed to a tool like Tableau, it's really the idea of that centralized logic. Tableau is very workbook-based, and it does make beautiful visualizations, but a lot of that logic being housed within an individual workbook and having different people work locally on different workbooks leads to that idea of data chaos. So the idea of Looker being able to centralize those definitions and logic, but still enable users to explore the data, to ask questions, and kind of click and drag and get that same type of user experience is really key. So that's how Looker really differentiates between in the industry opposed to products like that.
I think this next question is best suited for Martin. So Martin, how easy is it to learn the Looker software, and does it require an analyst with computer science background, or is it more open than that?
That's a good question. So we need to differentiate between two types of profiles working with Looker. One is the developer that sets up the infrastructure that deploys Looker, which is of course a very IT DevOps kind of profile. Whereas the same is true for building data models. You have to have a data background, I'd say, in order to do this. However, from a user perspective, our users do not have a data analyst background. We are using Looker across all departments, sales, customer success, and these are non-data, non-technical people. And to use Looker to analyze data is it's very easy. The UI is very user-friendly and very intuitive in my eyes.
Excellent. And then the next question for Meir. Meir, how does Looker integrate with other big data languages and platforms, such as Python?
Yeah, so whenever Looker writes queries, it really works against any SQL-based database, but you can utilize the API to pull data out of the platform, and you can utilize it with languages like Python. The API, of course, can also be utilized through Python in order to pull data directly, as well as a ton of other languages, C#, Ruby, etc. So because of that API, it really does act as a fully integrated data platform.
Excellent. And then building off of that, as a solution, The question is about whether there's support for using this on mobile devices and streaming in terms of accessing Looker and some of the data that's being pulled from it. Can you kind of address some of that?
Sure. Yeah. So Looker can be utilized on mobile devices. It would take just to check whenever you're building a dashboard or a report what that looks like, but it absolutely can be utilized on mobile devices. It is accessed through the browser, so everything in Looker is URL based. So you would need some sort of internet connection or data connection, but you can absolutely access Looker from anywhere and any type of device.
Excellent. And I think we're on to our last question here. So what kind of support for other languages, other than English here, does Looker provide?
That's a great question. So at the moment, English is the only supported language, but our product team is beginning a project focused on localization or effectively internationalizing Looker. So that is a feature and a concept that will be coming down the pipeline probably in the short to medium term as our engineers try to sort out how they want to tackle that. So that is pretty near on the horizon.
Excellent. That concludes today's HealthITAnalytics.com presentation. A special thanks to our speakers, our audience, and our sponsors, Looker and Healthify. Thank you and goodbye.